Something that, excuse me.
Oh, go ahead, John.
Something that you mentioned, Lisa, and I think maybe the opportunity is available, and I know you're saying funds are somewhat limited, and especially some of the grant funding, but yeah, I think it's time we start looking at another trail, another opportunity to connect, particularly St. Catherine College, and not to slight the campus that we're on today, but you don't have resident students here. Basically, they're all commuting. At St. Catherine, you have a nucleus, a population there that I think if we could connect by, and you know, during pretty weather, you know how students love to run, walk, bike, whatever. If we could connect them to downtown, I think it provides so many opportunities. Not only is it going to increase the retail opportunities, but that connection. We are. Springfield is a beautiful small town with such a warm atmosphere. I hear that all the time. We don't realize that because, not like we should, because we were born and raised here, and that's the norm for us. That is not the norm for most people. I mean, I hear all the time what a open, welcoming community. I had and I'll get sidetracked here just a minute. I had visitors too from Louisville Recycling, the company that we use sell some of our commodities. And they'd been to Springfield several times, and so just ask them, and they were talking about how much they enjoyed coming to Springfield. And the guy said, I'll tell you exactly why. Said, I had to park up by your office and walk down to Mordecai's. Said, I had 3 people say hello. Said, they had no idea who I was. Said, I had 3 people say hello. He said, you don't get that. That doesn't happen. So, you know, we talk about sustainability. It takes everything. It's not one thing that we can do. It's not, you know, raising our food locally, and that's going to do it by itself. It's not all the recycling efforts. As with most everything else, it takes such a broad spectrum, a big picture approach to sustainability for our community, and getting people to come here. I think our beautiful view sheds, as you referred to earlier, and one of the things that ever since I've been in office, I said that I wanted to try to improve, and it's a long-term thing. But if we want our community, so many people say they want our community to stay like it is. How do you get, and not to exclude any of I see a lot of people here that are not native Washington Countyans. How do you get your community to keep its same moral fiber and its values? Well, you keep your children, your grandchildren around. How do you keep those here? Well, you get them educated here if possible, and you provide opportunities for jobs. And so even though we don't want to see our rural Mecca here become an industrialized center, we do want jobs that can keep some of our very best, our brightest here, so that our families are here. And that moral fiber that we've taught, that's been taught to us and down through generations, will continue to be strong. And that attitude of hospitality and warmth, I think, will permeate. It does through families. I know we all have such tremendous ties to our families, but right now our children are separated, and I mean, they're separated from us, not from each other, but they're so far apart, and we'd like to have them home.
And we're in the process of hiring a new economic development director since we've lost Hal, and I think that one of the goals, and probably something Hal worked with before, but that was probably before I was on City Council, and that is, promoting our green businesses and our environmentally friendly businesses. And even our farmers market that we were talking about a while ago, they are, it's expanding all the time, and now we've got people not only bringing organic produce and free range chickens and for healthy eating, but people are making. We've got the alpaca growers, and they're shearing the alpaca and providing clothes, and so and these home remedies and that some are making and that are environmentally friendly, and those are things that I think that you know, we need to promote more. And I'm hoping our new, and I think our new economic development director will probably look in that direction as well. And those jobs, maybe we can get some of those at some of those businesses and industries that'll get our kids back home, Johnny.
One thing we haven't mentioned yet is the development of the new Wendell Berry initiative at St. Catherine's College and its economic potential. There may be a whole lot of jobs developing as that succeeds, because it's going to be a unique program not only in the state but in the nation, and Wendell Berry says probably in the whole world. So it's going to attract people to come here to teach, to work, to learn how to be sustainable farmers, and who knows where that may go in terms of our economy. So
yeah, and
it
you
all
know,
ties together.
We, Sister Claire, I'm glad you mentioned that, because we recently spoke with Dr. Leah Bands and the director of the program there, and we are hoping to meet with her and maybe come up with some creative partnerships. You know, we've often touted ourselves, you know, now that we are embracing the arts, you know, we feel like we've had people tell us, you know, with our college here, the proximity to St. Catherine, what's going on with the Wendell Berry initiative. You know, there's nothing to say that we can't be the next Berea. You know, so we're looking at embracing in some of their ideas, and we actually have a meeting scheduled with her this spring. Not official yet, but we've emailed back and forth about it. And I wanted to touch on one other couple of other things that the judge and Lisa were speaking of. And one thing, talking about you know, local business, and you know, I'm not sure if maybe, you know, particularly in this economy, you know, I don't think that, you know, small communities can expect you know, another Toyotomi to walk through our doors. You know, I think we have to maybe look in the interim. We need to look at embracing, again, I'll go back to your mom and pop kinds of businesses, your small businesses. You know, in Hal's absence, just one day last week, I had a young man in, and you know, he was lost, but he, you know, had some mechanic skills. You know, wanted to start a mechanic shop. Certainly impressed me that he was a mechanic. You know, had talked about his liability insurance and his rent. You know, he was putting together a little business plan. You know, and it dawned on me, you know, maybe we need to have a place for, you know, to maybe an incubator for businesses. You know, a lot of communities have embraced the incubator kinds of systems. You know, there's nothing to say that we won't have a space where we can create some kind of an incubator. You know, because I do see that void. You know, we kind of need that. You know, sometimes people need just a little bit of encouragement, and it might just be something small, you know, that's really keeping them from maybe trusting in themselves to give that business a try. So I think we need to look at that. And also, I wanted to mention, the judge had mentioned about you know, a walking trail connecting St. Catherine to our community. We actually made an application, or we were in the process of making an application probably 10 years ago now. We didn't actually go forward with it, but that's something we have recently rejuvenated, particularly now that St. Catherine, you know, they are officially, you know, citizens of the city. They've been incorporated into the city limits. Thank you, St. Catherine College. We appreciate you, because you know that's been a tremendous help for us. So.
So with that in mind, I'd like to invite now the rest of you to join the conversation. It's been a very interesting one already, and I know you'll make it even more interesting. Tim?
What role does sustainability play in alluring industry to Springfield?
It's probably, and I'll start maybe, it's one of those factors that you probably can't put a value or pinpoint it. There's so many things that the way industry looks and tries to find a place to go, has changed completely since I came into office, and that's been a few years ago. So many times we never know that somebody's looked at us because there's so much information available on the internet. If someone's looking for a railhead, well, we're eliminated immediately because we don't have a railroad. But if you can get those people here, I mean, you've already heard our people, our scenery. If we develop everything up and down our roads to where they're not are unsightly, then some of those managers, the people that make decisions, will not want to come here. And part of the reason that we still are attractive because we have a very dedicated, a very hard-working workforce. The whole state will say that we need a higher skill level to attract the kind of industry that we'd like to have here, those that are going to pay a high amount, but still the sustainability, the people normally of the higher income are the people that will spend the little bit extra money to buy locally grown food, organically grown. They are the ones that are more involved in recycling, by and large. Now, I'm not meaning to exclude anyone because we have all socioeconomic levels that participate in recycling, but so it's a lot of little things that just add to the appeal of a location. If y'all can add to that. That's a tough question. Good question.
I do know that, like Johnny said, that, our workforce, it's a concern because, you need an educated workforce. And just today, Johnny and I both were at the Heartland Youth Coalition meeting, and, you can't get industry already here has problems getting workers who can pass a drug test. I mean, that's pretty bad. That's another whole issue. I mean, so it's about education. That is the key, in my opinion. And you've got to have a pleasant community for industry to come to that's has good schools, has a pretty town and nice people, all of which we have, so I can't imagine. but I think those are a couple of the issues.
Anybody else want to get into the conversation?
I got another question.
So let's hold up Tim and give somebody else a chance first, okay?
Maybe the only one.
Well, go ahead, Tim.
Sure. All right. What about drop-off points in the county for recycling? I mean, I know it's not feasible, like they go around in the city and do the recycling. But what about drop-off points within the county?
Tim, that's another excellent question. We did that, well, time passes, it's probably been at least 6 or 7, maybe 8 years ago. And it just hasn't been considered here lately. The major problem we had at that time was finding, especially the second year, finding someone that would allow us to put the collection site. Even if we had property, and we had a couple places that the county owned or were able to lease, the neighbors, because it ends up being such an unsightly area, unless it's policed almost constantly. And so we had a real problem the second go-around getting sites, because so many people that were at the first time refused to let us come back because we had such a response. For one thing, our containers overflowed almost overnight, and once that happens, you can't contain it all. And so that was one of the biggest obstacles. That's a good point. We need to try that again.
Well, I mean, being that the containers overflowed or whatever, I mean, if you was to start again, I mean, what do you think about placing more containers down and perhaps going to the sites once a week to pick it up?
And we were,
I mean, I don't know how often you went to.
well, we were planning once a week there. The last time we did, we were ended up 2 and 3 times a week at some of them, just trying to keep it cleaned up so the neighbors didn't complain so much.
Well, more recycle bins, I mean,
Right.
goes off.
I'm making a note. That's a good idea. Sometimes the most successful things are so obvious you don't see them. I'm sorry, sister.
I was wondering if there are any initiatives to keep our streams clean. That's a concern of ours, is to have farmlands that are protective of the cleaner streams. Is there anything countywide or city?
I can speak on behalf of the city. The city of Springfield has had planning and zoning efforts ongoing since 1968. We were one of the first cities in Kentucky to adopt planning and zoning. I always have to tell people that, you know, it's one of those love-hate things. You know, you love it when your neighbor's building too close to your property line, but you hate it when you have to get a permit. But overall, it's something that after people understand planning and zoning, they love it and they appreciate it. And they police it. They call you and let you know. But on that end of things, I wanted to talk about our subdivision regulations, where if someone submits a plan and in the plan, you know, they're proposing a development which would involve a subdivision plat, we have oversight on behalf of our city engineer, and he looks closely at runoff. You know, requires, you know, silt screens, those kinds of deterrents. So we do address it to some degree. In terms of regulating anything that's allowed to run in the streams, you know, we rely on federal and state officials to regulate those kinds of issues. There
are so many state and federal regulations, even down to cattle in streams. There have been incentives, financial incentives to fence off streams and keep cattle from just, especially in the summertime, from standing and trying to cool off. That has been one deterrent to rural pollution. As Lori was saying, the construction industry now has regulated to the point for any runoff of a construction site, so it has to be contained much more so than ever. I was impressed, and I don't have those numbers. I was reading just recently about how our streams have improved the water quality, not only in our state but as a nation, over the last 20 years. And we tend to think those were the good old days back when we were younger, but when you look at what has actually been tested, that our water, by and large, and we can all go to a spot that is heavily polluted, I'm sure, but by and large is much cleaner today than it was 20 years ago. So.
Follow-up, is there anything currently to encourage farmers to keep the cattle out of the streams?
There are still, and there are still some programs that will finance some fencing, tree planting to protect streams so many feet, 150, 180 feet away from streams, to provide that silt zone. I know, for example, our primary water source is Willisburg Lake, and the city of Willisburg has been very diligent in maintaining. There's a 100-foot buffer completely around that lake, and they have been very diligent. I have to commend them on their activities on keeping that clear of any buildings. Someone even started building a lagoon that encroached on that area, and actually they had to not only stop construction, they had to level it back, reseed it, and so there have been a lot of efforts to keep that water source clean.
I know our Water and Sewer Commission is very cognizant of that water source, the city's primary water source. You know, I know they've met with Mayor Kirsch, Willisburg's mayor, recently. Commend her, she's tremendous. Mayor Kirsch does a good job.
If I understand it, I think it's mandatory from the federal government that every farmer is supposed to have a water quality plan and in the county. In fact, it may be nationwide, I don't know, but he said we're supposed to have a water quality plan. I've got a plan. from the federal government, but the problem, they don't have the staff to enforce the abusers. There has been a lot of work done towards cleaning up the streams with the cattle. There have been programs to keep the cattle out and so forth and so on. But then comes the abusers, and the law is not enforced. So there's the problem but it's a lot better than it was.
I'll address it, and I will concur with what Mr. Young says, but we had to have a water quality plan on just the 11 or 12 acres that we have, where we have our transfer station and our animal composting site. We have to file that plan, and it has to be updated every year. So the water is tested where it's coming off site.
I guess my concern is I continue seeing it in the county, and I'm concerned of E. coli and all those other diseases that get into our waterways. And is there any way to educate and encourage those who aren't having a plan or aren't using their plan?
We're letting the cattle be in the stream, is that what you mean?
Cattle or what other animals they might have.
Well, not currently, not other than the state and federal incentives.
There's no prohibition by law, there's only encouragement.
Right.
That's where we are. I don't know if Kentucky is unique in that way, or that's the way a lot of states are, but there's nothing that says, no, you can't let your cattle stand in the stream, which to me, it seems like that's the next step.
I believe there is a state or federal law that says that. It's just that how do you encourage farmers who's not, and if there's any kind of education or letters or forums to help farmers understand how significant of a problem it is.
You mean there's no penalties for it? That they can do it with, I mean, there's no...
Currently, the only penalties are no future funding, or it's highly discouraged for people who do violate. But again, the oversight is like everything else. There's not enough people to go around.
There's not enough to enforce it.
And part of that probably too, you know, is education. You know, I mean, I used to be a farmer, I'm not anymore, but you know, people have to understand why it is their cattle aren't supposed to walk through running streams. I mean, maybe some people maybe don't understand that.
It is. It's like everything is education. And I don't want no indictment on my parents, but I can remember as a young child that the way we got rid of our household garbage is we went to church, there was a deep ditch that we'd throw it in. Roll down the window and throw it. I mean, you know, that certainly doesn't happen now. And my parents wouldn't advocate that now, but that was the norm. You know, the norm has to be changed, and that just occurs through education.
And what people don't realize is that as there are more people and more cattle, then things change. I mean, it used to be
Greater impact.
100 years ago, didn't make that much difference because the number of cattle was small, the number of people was small. But now, I think in Kentucky, if I remember correctly, there's like 9 million head of cattle, beef
I think
cattle.
you're correct.
I think there's 4 million people and 9 million head of cattle. Well, when you get that number of large animals walking in streams, that's very different from what it was 100 years ago. So, you know, we have to realize that as populations increase, then we have to limit our activities more and more. All right, we have time for just one more question.
Mine wasn't a question, so to speak, but more of a comment, and to comment on or to commend the county and cities on the trash pickup. And so when I was living in Knott County about 25, 30 years ago when, John, I'm not sure whether you ever met Homer Sawyer, was judge executive in Knott County, and I remember the furor that he raised when, not long after he was elected, he started a mandatory trash pickup. And boy, you talk about citizens up in arms.
Right.
And, you know, we've come a long way.
So Judge Sells.
Well, actually, my predecessor caught most of the brunt of that. I have to commend him for that.
Yeah, but it made such a difference in the county, you know, the county roads and so on. And again, I commend officials on that because I think
Thank you.
I know in eastern Kentucky we had a reputation for, like you're saying, just throwing your trash out the window, but it makes a big difference.
Now, if we could, I've been a proponent of zoning, and I've chide Johnny about it sometimes. I told him today I was going to mention it because I think within our county, because, I'm concerned about our bypass. I'm concerned about, and when you come into the city from the county, on the Bluegrass Parkway or even from St. Catherine into Springfield, when you have a car lot mixed in a residential neighborhood, or you've got, there's no rhyme or reason to where if people just buy property, they can put anything they want. Those things concern me. I think it's important that that we have zoning laws to kind of keep things, have a plan in our development, so that we keep our our farms, so that we keep our green space, so that we, so that our development has a purpose, and that we meet that we have goals established, rather than just kind of haphazard. And so, I just threw that in there, but it made me think of that, and I had told Johnny earlier I was going to mention that.
I have one comment to that, Lisa, and I know when we have public hearings so many times, the only people that show up are the people that are against things. So I think that those of us as citizens who support something should be much more aware of attending those hearings and speaking up for something instead of just sitting back, and then, because that's what you as an elected official or our magistrates, they have to, in a hearing process, basically base their opinion on what they hear at that hearing. So therefore, we as citizens who are for something need to be there encouraging the magistrates or council persons to support something. Because it seems like so many times in hearings that I've been to, it's always where people speak out against something than they do for something. So I think that's something that we all need to keep in mind as citizens who want to see change.
Exactly.
Well, I just want to say a huge thank you. This has been a very interesting forum. And I want to commend the city of Springfield and your leaders, and Washington County and your leaders, because it's very clear from what you've shared with us tonight that you are taking very seriously what it is to be a sustainable rural community and how we can continue to grow in our leadership. And I do believe that we're taking leadership in our state, and that people are taking notice that Washington County and Springfield are communities where people really are trying to take better care of this beautiful, gorgeous planet that we've been given by our Creator. And that's in such danger because of human carelessness. So thank you, each one of you, for being here tonight, for preparing, for presenting so wonderfully, and to all of you for coming and participating. And together may we continue to go forward and claim really loud that we are Kentucky's greenest, most sustainable rural community.
Thank you, Sister Claire.
Thank
we
you, Sister Claire.
appreciate you and New Pioneers.
Definitely.
Thank you, sister.
Thanks.